And welcome back to the Motion Picture Rundown, the business side of entertainment. I'm Dustin Whitcomb. I'm so glad to have you back, whether you're listening on anchor.fm/MPR-podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening, Stitcher. We're in so many places, and I can't thank the little efforts made by everyone to get this show up and running. I'm having such a good time. I hope you are too. Let's get into the second half of the show here. After a much needed year of change, women are still struggling to get equal opportunity behind the camera. With all of this much needed change coming to the film sets and offices in Hollywood and elsewhere, you'd think that we'd be able to see the numbers and see the hard results. And yet, a new study from the Center for Women in Television and Film has shown that women accounted for only 8% of directors of the top 250 films in 2018. That's down 3% from last year and down 1% from 1998. The study goes on to highlight some of the tremendous strides made by women in key administrative and creative positions, such as making up 29% of producers of the top 500 films of 2018, 23% of editors, 22% of executive producers, and 15% of directors. And first off, we need to celebrate the changes that have rocked Hollywood over the last 2 years. In a stay-up and party industry, there were a lot of unchecked rules with regard to how fellow human beings were being treated when the cameras weren't rolling on those sets and in those offices. Second, with regard to this study, the percentages gained by women over the course of 2018 was small, and as much as it should be celebrated, it's small. And people will say, well, people always say, well, women need those decision-making roles for statistics like these to truly rise. They need to be in those executive positions so that they can hire more women. And that's true. The percentages are also much higher on films with at least one female director. On films with at least one female director, women comprised 47% of editors. On films exclusively with male directors, women accounted for 19% of editors. On films with at least one female editor, women comprised 19% of cinematographers as opposed to 3% with a male director. And on films with at least one female director, women comprised 24% of female composers. On films with exclusively male directors, women only accounted for 7% of composers. The executive director of the Center for Women in TV and Film told the New York Times in a statement, this radical underrepresentation is unlikely to be remedied by the voluntary efforts of just a few individuals or a single studio. Without a large-scale effort mounted by the major players, the studios, talent agencies, guilds, and associations, we are unlikely to see meaningful change. So there's a lot going on here with this study. While there were small gains made, and when you break it down into certain departments, and when you break it down into a comparison of years past, there were a lot of important gains made. That said, it was only, it was actually down 3% from last year for female directors. Excuse me. And it was down 1% from 1998. And so, as a whole, there were a lot of small gains made over the last year. But when it comes to one of the most important, the captain of the ship, the most important person on the film set, the one who's sort of most in charge in terms of who has the most responsibility over story and how the film is made, the director, women only accounted for 8%, and it was down 3% from last year and 1% from 98. So there were tremendous strides made, and those should be celebrated. Like I said, hats off to all the hardworking women over the last year that have found themselves in administrative and creative positions that are very key to the film set. Congratulations. But let's also say that what should be obvious is that there needs to be more. And those blockbuster movies that are coming out this year, if you go back and take a look at the Cinema Blend list that we talked about in the first half of the show and see how many of those movies have women behind the camera in those top tier positions that we just talked about, that we just read statistics on, you're going to see those smaller percentages in play. The ones that have exclusive male directors, those smaller percentages is what you'll find if you take a look at that list. And so you want original content. A story that you've never heard before, from someone you've never met before, that's new and exciting, and the kind of story that you go to the cinema to see, because that is the magic of movies. Hearing a story you've never heard before from someone you've never heard before, and having it be cathartic and bring an emotion out of you. That's the magic of movies, and that's the magic. That's what cinema can do. Well, let's start including the voices that aren't being heard.